To survive the deadly Ebola virus is one thing, but to return to the centre of the epidemic to play a part again in trying to control the outbreak is quite another. William Pooley, the British nurse who was the first Briton to contract the virus in Sierra Leone, was desperately ill when the RAF evacuated him from a government hospital in Kanema 3 weeks ago. The odds of him surviving were very poor, but he had state-of-the-art treatment at the Royal Free Hospital in London under the care of specialists, including Stephen Mepham, the infectious diseases and microbiology consultant who flew to Sierra Leone to accompany William home. But now, with the death toll rising, charities such as Médecins Sans Frontières saying they're struggling to cope and having to turn patients away, he's going back. He'd only worked in the hospital for 6 weeks when he became infected, and he believes he has work to do again in Sierra Leone. Well, good evening, and it's very good to see you looking well.
Thank you.
You went to work in that hospital. You were already working for a charity in the area, but then you went to the hospital because of Ebola. Did you know what you were facing?
Not before I went. After a couple of weeks there, it became apparent that it was nurses were getting infected, and there was it was a risky place to work. That did become apparent after a few weeks, but there was also improvement happening all the time, so it felt like things were becoming safer.
And indeed, you did lose friends that you had made there.
Yeah. In the time I was there, 8 or so colleagues died
when you were there
that I was working with.
And then, when you became ill, did you realise quickly just how ill you were?
Yeah, it was overnight really. I started to feel sick, and then the next day was tested, and I had the feeling that it was going to be bad news, and the test proved that I had Ebola. So yeah, it happened very quickly.
At that point, did you tell? I always wonder about this. Did you tell your parents at that point?
Well, I wanted to hold off until the evacuation was confirmed. So once all of that had been put into place, then I was able to tell my parents.
It must have been quite an extraordinary. I mean, obviously, you understand infectious disease. You work with infectious diseases, but for you yourself to be in that isolation tent and to be treated in isolation at the Royal Free, what did you make of all that? I mean, the treatment must have been extraordinary.
It was extraordinary, and the contrast between the care that I'd been providing in Sierra Leone with the care that I received. I was outnumbered by healthcare workers, whereas the patients were outnumbering me.
You were being treated with about a third world disease is being treated in a first world country, as opposed to what happens in a third world country.
Yes, and that changes outcomes. So I had a better chance because I had that treatment, that care.
But what do you think about that? Do you think if this had been a disease that broadly affected a white Western population, we would have found a vaccine quicker? We'd have done more about it earlier?
Well, of course, it's always money. There's always, money has to be made out of these things, and so it was easy to ignore this problem while it was small pockets of disease occurring in poor places. But I don't think it can be ignored any longer.
No, I mean, that's what Médecins Sans Frontières is saying in Liberia, that it really is out of control and they're having to turn patients away. And what do you think about that?
Well, they said they needed a brand new 800-bed hospital. That's how bad the problem is, and it really is getting out of control, especially in Liberia, but in Sierra Leone as well. You can see the rate of new infections is just going up exponentially, and
that means more and more deaths because they're just not the facilities to treat.
Yeah, and we're moving away from the time when we can contain this towards a point where it's a lost cause.
And what do you want David Cameron to do?
I would love to see him take global leadership on this and dedicate a good amount of resources for establishing treatment centres, like a number of treatment centres in Sierra Leone and Liberia, where they can give decent care from international staff, well-resourced. They'll be safe for staff to work in and have better outcomes for patients.
Well, that's just a quick question about that, because of course, you've had the disease, you've been treated. Can you ever get it again? There's some dispute about this.
Almost all of the evidence points towards immunity. We don't know exactly for how long, whether it's lifelong, but it seems very likely that I'd be protected against this strain of Ebola at least.
And how quickly are you going back?
It'll be a few weeks.
'Cause you don't have your passport yet because it was incinerated.
Yeah, it's still, that's in the post.
And your family are okay with you going back?
Yeah, they support me all the way.
Thank you very much, William Pooley.